You know, we all think of schools as safe places, right? A place to learn, to grow up. But what happens when that's not true? In Malaysia, there's this really disturbing trend where classrooms, dorms, they're becoming scenes of serious violence. And it sparked this huge national debate about a really tough question. When the system fails to protect kids, who's actually to blame? Let's get into it. This question, man, it just cuts right through all the noise, doesn't it? It gets to the absolute heart of the matter. This isn't just about a few bad kids or a single tragic event. It's about looking at the entire system that was supposed to prevent it from happening in the first place. And this number, this is why it's so urgent, 136%. That's the increase in reported school bullying cases in Malaysia in just the last 3 years. That is not a small uptick, that's an explosion. It's a massive red flag telling us that whatever's being done right now isn't working. In fact, the problem is getting worse, and it's getting worse fast. So, to really understand what's going on, we have to look past the numbers for a minute. We have to confront the reality on the ground, and that means looking at the human stories that show just how high the stakes really are. And what's so tough about this is that these aren't just hypotheticals. These are real things that have happened. The death of Zara Karina, a 13-year-old girl, it was a national tragedy. We've seen a student literally stabbed to death by a classmate. Unspeakable acts of sexual violence that were filmed and spread around. Even a 10-year-old kid with cancer being bullied so badly, they ended up in the hospital. Twice. I mean, this is way beyond kids being kids. This is a full-blown crisis. Okay, so the obvious question here is, what about the rules? Aren't there policies to stop this from happening? And yeah, there are. But as we're about to see, there is a massive difference between what the policy says on paper and what actually happens in the schools. So if you just read the documents, everything looks great. Malaysia has an official zero-tolerance policy. They've got online portals where you can report bullying, super detailed instructions for schools, the whole shebang. But in reality, it's a totally different story. Research shows teachers just don't feel equipped to handle it. A government committee found that the rules aren't even being properly followed. And worst of all, there's this common practice of just sweeping cases under the rug to make the school look good. And if you want to see the result of that disconnect, well, this chart says it all. Even with all those rules in place, the numbers just keep going up and up and up. From less than 4,000 reported cases in 2022 to more than 7,600 in 2024. This is pretty much proof positive that the policies as they exist right now are failing. And this brings us to this perfect metaphor, the paper tiger. It's a brilliant way to describe these anti-bullying policies. They look big and strong and intimidating on paper. But when they actually have to face a real-world problem, they're completely toothless. They just fall apart. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be this way. You look at a country like Finland and you see a completely different approach. Their Kiva program isn't about punishing the bully after the fact. It's about preventing it from happening in the first place. Through empathy, they focus on empowering the other kids, the bystanders, to change the culture. And the results, they speak for themselves. Finland saw a massive drop in bullying, while Malaysia saw that huge spike. It shows that other ways are possible. So why? Why do these paper tiger policies fail so badly? Well, the analysis points to something deeper, like an unwritten rule that's wrecking the whole system from the inside out. We need to dig into the why behind the failure. And here it is. This is the root of the problem, a culture of silence. It's this built-in instinct inside the system to hide problems instead of fixing them. The thinking goes that a bullying report makes the school look bad, so the best thing to do is just make it go away quietly. This drive to protect the institution's reputation completely poisons any real attempt at zero tolerance. And look, if you think that sounds like an exaggeration, it's not. This is a direct quote from Malaysia's own Director General of Education. It's a public admission from the very top that this culture of sweeping things under the rug is real. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's a known flaw in the system. But a culture of silence like this doesn't just appear out of nowhere. To really get it, we have to zoom out and look at the whole school environment, an environment that's basically become a breeding ground for aggression. So take a look at this number, nearly 80%. According to a major study, almost 80% of secondary school students in Malaysia are involved in bullying in some way. That's absolutely staggering. It tells you right away that this isn't a problem with a few bad kids. This is a core, normalized part of the school experience for almost everybody. But here's where it gets really telling. When you break that number down, look at that massive slice in the middle. Almost half of the students involved are what's called bully victims. That means they're not just one or the other, they are both. They bully other kids, and they get bullied themselves. It shows you this toxic, vicious cycle where hurt people end up hurting other people. So what's feeding this whole toxic ecosystem? Well, the sources point to a few key things. You've got power dynamics, struggles for social status, often tied up in toxic masculinity. You've got social media, which can make people numb to cruelty. And get this, Malaysia actually has one of the highest rates of cyberbullying in all of Asia. And all of this is playing out in a system that's stretched thin, with things like teacher burnout and overcrowded classes making everything worse. So all of this, the failed policies, the culture of silence, this whole ecosystem of aggression, it all leads us to the final and most important question. When it all goes wrong, who is ultimately responsible? The source material gives us two really powerful ways to think about this. The first is a political idea, ministerial responsibility. The second is a deep cultural idea, the concept of amanah, or a sacred trust. Let's break them both down. Okay, so ministerial responsibility. This is a political tradition that says, basically, the buck stops at the top. The minister in charge has to take the blame for big failures in their department. But the analysis points out that in Malaysia, this idea is often kind of weak. It's notional, meaning it exists in name only. Real-world consequences for the person at the top are pretty rare. But then there's this other framework, amanah. And this one hits differently. It's a really important concept in Malaysia that sees leadership not just as a job, but as a sacred trust, a responsibility given to you by the people and by God. And when you look at it through that lens, failing to protect children isn't just a policy mistake. It's a deep moral failure. It's a betrayal of that trust. And all of this leaves us with one last big question to think about. This isn't really about pointing the finger at one person. It's about understanding the problem. If the entire system is broken, the policies, the culture, the social environment, is just swapping out the person at the top really enough to fix it? Or does real, lasting change have to come from somewhere much, much deeper? That's the question right at the center of this crisis.